Thank you. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Ooh, great. This is the audience with great endurance and intestinal fortitude to last all the way to towards the end of the conference. Thank you all for joining. My name is Karen Niemi. I am the CEO of CASEL. That's the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And we are joined here by a variety of folks who will be speaking about wellness and health in education. So I'm going to kind of launch this session with a couple of statistics that some of you may know and others may not. It's still shocking either way. There have been numerous national surveys that have been conducted lately. The most recent one, that is a survey of middle and high school students, showed that less than 1/3 of the students in middle and high school in this country feel that their schools provide caring, positive, nurturing, encouraging environments. Less than half of students surveyed reported having competencies such as empathy, conflict resolution, and decision-making skills. There was a big study that was recently conducted by the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and the Born This Way Foundation. Basically what they did is they surveyed a whole bunch of middle and high school kids and asked them how they feel about school. The words that came back, they kind of looked at all the words that came back to describe the kids' experience in school, and what they found is that 75% of the words used by students to describe their school experience were negative. The top 3 words were tired, stressed, and bored. So I open our session not to depress everybody right off the bat, but to paint a picture of how kids are feeling in school. We all know, and the research is very clear, that when kids feel like they are in safe, supported learning environments, they perform better academically. The research is always also clear that when students are experiencing social and emotional programming, they do 11% better academically, they have better behavior, they have better performance in school graduation, and they also are happier, healthier people. We have a panel today that represents a variety of different initiatives that schools are using to really help kids in the non-traditional way. Some I would consider social and emotional learning, some not necessarily social and emotional learning, but all approaches to health and well-being that we believe would be of great importance for people to know and understand more about. So with that sort of as an introduction, I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves and to let you know where they're from, and we'll keep the introduction short, go to questions, and then open it up to questions that you all may have. So go ahead.
I'm David Morris. I'm CEO of Smart Lunches. We're out of Boston. We do healthy lunch delivery to schools that don't have a lunch program.
I'm Mia Dosis. I'm with an organization called Committee for Children. I'm on the leadership team there, and I run a division of the organization that focuses on how do we take what we do with social emotional learning in the classroom. So our organization is the largest provider of social emotional learning in the country. How do we do that work, and how do we amplify the effects by taking that content outside of the classroom into other places where kids are?
My name is Nicole Cardoza, and I'm the founder and CEO of Yoga Foster. We make wellness elementary by empowering educators with yoga for the classroom.
Great. Good afternoon. I'm Scott McQuigg, co-founder and CEO of GoNoodle. GoNoodle is online movement videos and games to get kids moving in the classroom and in the living room. And in the past 30 days, we've had over 12 million elementary students in 620,000 elementary classrooms participate in our online physical activity programming.
Great, excellent. So why don't we start off with the question. I think the audience would be interested in knowing what it is that you're striving to accomplish in terms of health and wellness outcomes for kids. Do you want to start on your end and go back?
Sure, happy to. Yeah, so you mentioned tired, stressed, and bored, and I think all of us share a common approach to trying to change that. We're very much focused on elementary schools, and we don't want kids to be tired, stressed, and bored because we know they don't learn when those are the words they associate with school. So GoNoodle is all about making school incorporate energy and integrate energy into the classroom, giving teachers the tools to get kids up and moving. Because when we know when kids move, that they are more prepared to learn, they're better behaved, they're better focused. There's just a better ethos in the classroom when movement is incorporated. And when we talk about movement, we're talking about short intervention of movement, 3 to 5 minutes at a time. The outcomes that we're really focused on really range from, can we improve behavior, can we improve academic performance, but also can we improve health outcomes? You mentioned some of the startling statistics about schools and about kids at school. One of the things that really inspired us to build GoNoodle was that when we realized only 4% of elementary schools have daily PE. If you just think about that, 4% of elementary schools in the United States have daily PE. My daughter's in the 5th grade. She has PE twice a week. And in many schools, that's considered a luxury. Look, we could all spend time suggesting, we believe every school should have PE every day and recess every day, but there's going to be a big fight that takes place to make that happen. So we're just focused on, well, let's use the built environment to integrate physical activity right into the classroom.
Yeah. With Yoga Foster, a lot of our work is quite similar. How do we get kids moving in a small space with limited time and limited infrastructure to facilitate movement? But what I love about what we're doing is we know that teachers are always telling kids to pay attention and rarely teach them how. And that can be a really draining experience for a child who might feel really discouraged and stressed out all the time because they might not know how to focus and how to center and ground themselves. Through a yoga practice and through a movement and mindfulness practice, that can become apparent. And it's even better when the teacher is doing that work with you. And it creates a different relationship that you have with your educator and fosters a safer space to learn and to practice.
So our outcomes really that we're hoping for are both the safety and the well-being of children, and the way that we approach that is through their social and emotional development. So as Karen said, we have a lot of data to show that when children are more socially and emotionally competent, there are all kinds of good outcomes for them, not just academically, but also in life. They are far less likely to have drug and alcohol problems. They're less likely to become incarcerated. They are more likely to be successful in work and the relationships that happen both in their personal and professional lives. So given those things, we take a very research-based and skill-building approach to learning very specific skills that we know as you build over time are the key ingredients to building social and emotional competence. So we do that through curriculum, and our curriculum spans early learning through 8th grade. And it's kind of the things that you would think of, or maybe you wouldn't think of. So sometimes I like to be a little specific about, what do kids learn in a social emotional learning program? Well, they learn things like how to negotiate and compromise. They learn how to take other people's perspectives. They learn how to recognize their own emotions, to name them, because surprisingly kids, you'd think that's such a basic thing, but they don't even know the vocabulary sometimes. You'll find kids in high school who have real problems with anger, and the only word they have for strong feelings is mad, when it might be frustrated, it might be disappointed. So we try to build that vocabulary very early. We help them learn skills for making friends and for getting along with others, for solving problems. So these are all broken down into skill steps, practiced, and then we do a lot of research on the programs to make sure that they're working. And then more recently, we have incorporated some mindfulness programs that, when I told you earlier that we want to be able to bridge that, the work that we do in schools into the homes, we are starting to work on ways that there are things that people can do at school, that kids can do in school, like the activities in GoNoodle, like the yoga, like mindfulness, that if you present them in a way that is scalable and simple for people to use, it's very likely that then they'll be able to use them at home, and when the kids love them, the kids will want to do them at home.
From my perspective, you hear a lot about school lunches, particularly over the past week. You don't hear very much about the no lunch problem, though. These institutions that we serve, smaller schools, less than 500-600 kids, that can't have a cafeteria find themselves defaulting to the easiest thing they can, as do the parents. Both the parents don't want to have to pack a lunch every day. They want an alternative. When they do pack a lunch, often they have to default to what's fast, what's easy, because they are time crunched. They also need to have food in the fridge that's going to hold up and last over time. And the schools, when they go out and they look for alternatives, often find the most straightforward thing is, for example, bringing in fast food. You'd be shocked how many schools that we work with that prior to our arrival were bringing in pizza every day, which separately the kids love, but too bad. So, what's our goal? Our goal is to give parents the ability to customize a lunch for their child. We've got 6 different entree options every day, 3 different fruit or vegetable sides. Let's pick something for your child that you want them to eat and that they will enjoy, that's going to meet their needs, give them a balanced diet, capture and address their nutritional restrictions, their allergies, and I'm really trying to replace Lunchables, actually. That's my real bête noire, but replace the pizzas, the lopsided meals that are out there, get them a healthy, balanced meal, and really, ideally, honestly, get lunch and food to be something interesting and exciting. Get them pushing down that path towards trying variety. Let's not have kids that are, they eat chicken fingers every single day. Let's try and get them to the point where they're going to try something else different. We've got a fabulous cauliflower tikka masala. That's tricky. But really the goal is give the parents an option, give the school an option, and give the kids something healthy and balanced.
I'll offer just a very unscientific tidbit, but I was traveling across the country, visiting lots of the schools a couple of years ago, and decided I was going to do a survey on what kids most often have for lunch. So this is totally anecdotal, informal, my own, thought this would be interesting. Guess what we found? Depending on the country, depending on the region, 2 things came almost 90%. Flamin' Hot Cheetos and Krispy Kreme. Those were the top 2 most commonly had breakfast in school. So anyway, we chuckle, but I have to fight my own daughter not to eat that. Sorry. Okay, so let's move on. How do you reach the students who are in the most need? Anybody can reply.
I'll just share that when we launched GoNoodle, we said that this issue of lack of physical activity for kids is prevalent everywhere. In places where you think there are students who are in need, and places where you would say students aren't in need. But kids, by and large, don't move the way prior generations did. But it was one of the reasons why we launched GoNoodle as a freemium model. We just felt like it was important to not put price as a barrier to getting kids moving. We have a premium version that we ultimately market to teachers. But look, you can have a great physical activity experience in your classroom on our free version. We just felt like if our mission is to get kids moving, let's make sure that we truly help schools who need it most get access to it. And I'm really proud to say that 70% of the schools that use GoNoodle are Title I schools.
Great. Anyone else?
I can answer.
Sure.
And it's a similar answer. Actually, schools are a great place to reach all kinds of kids. It's why so many programs are delivered in the schools. And I sometimes hear when I go to the conferences, about schools in poor neighborhoods not being able to afford programs. But I do think that a lot of the school districts, especially the urban ones that have a lot of high needs kids, they do have a lot of funding, and they will spend it on things that they know have an evidence base and that they know are good for kids. So I'd say that if you can really draw from the research and the evidence base, that there are resources in schools to help reach the kids who need it most. And I think that we were talking about this before when we've evaluated our programs and looked to see who's making the greatest gains in terms of benefits. It's the kids who test out from the beginning as having the lower social skills, who, when they are given this type of a program, do make the greatest gains. So it's rewarding to see that happening in the schools across the country.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about technology. How has technology allowed you to better address health and wellness?
I'll take a crack at that.
Yeah.
You know, customizing lunches for dozens of kids, thousands of kids at hundreds of schools in 9 different states, you can't do it, or you couldn't do it on paper. The technology for us is allowing us, and frankly also allowing schools everywhere. There are multiple platforms out there that are allowing schools to start to get their arms around how to arm parents with the ability to customize lunches for their children. And without that technology platform and that interface, it's simply not possible.
Similarly for us, I mean, the way that we work is we train the school teachers on how to do yoga in their classrooms during the day. And if you're familiar with the yoga setting, right now you take a 200-hour training to become a yoga teacher, and that takes, you know, either you take a month off from work because you have the luxury to do that, or you spend, you know, 3 months on your weekends going to some studio, you know, in Soho, and where we're based in New York City, to do that work. And that's not something that an educator might have the time or the luxury or the privilege to be able to do. So by building an online teacher training platform that allows them to learn over time and track real-time results that they're getting from their students from this practice in the classroom, not only does that mean that they can get that 200 hours in a time that works for them, they can also have a journey digitally tracked out on where they made an impact with their students and how their students progressed from day 1 to the last day of school. We usually do a day 100 kind of check-in. And it's cool to see, like, how has the physical aptitude of my students changed? How are my kids focusing and paying attention? Does this practice align with test scores or decreased trips to the principal's office? So that's helped us. And then, you know, as a nonprofit, for us now it costs us $20 to bring yoga to 1 student for the whole school year. That's the cost of a yoga class. So to be able to use technology as our platform completely transforms kind of the wealth and the privilege behind this concept of yoga. It makes it super accessible for the people that need it most.
You know, as we've thought about technology, I think the thing we try to think about is that we're now competing with everybody else's. You mentioned earlier, Mia, you know, people creating things to implement in schools because it's the best way to reach kids at scale. We're competing with everybody else who's trying to reach kids at scale, and many of them are here at this conference in terms of other ed tech companies. So it's one thing to think about the technology. I think our team has done an exceptional job of thinking about the experience, and the experience is much more about how do we make this so super simple for a teacher to integrate into a classroom, meaning we've gotten it down to if you know how to push play on YouTube, you can play a video or a game on GoNoodle. And then the experience that we think about for kids is this going to be the most fun thing they get to do at school? And it's why our creative team includes people who one of my co-founders is a former executive producer at Nickelodeon, people who just understand how kids think. And so we've really tried to use technology, but also think about the use experience, thinking about the 2 key constituents that are in the room, and that is it has to work for the teacher, it shouldn't create a burden, and it has to be fun for the kids. And that's right at that bored comment you mentioned earlier. We don't want the kids to be bored because we know when kids are engaged, they're going to learn better.
I would also say that I can give an example from a project that we're working on where it makes it possible for us to meet kids where they are in digital environments. So as an example, we have a project where we're working in Minecraft. So we didn't create something new. We just went to the place where they are. And I'm sure that people generally know what Minecraft is. It's a place for, it's like virtual Legos, and some servers give kids the ability to play with other kids in a multiplayer space, so it's like being on the playground, but on this virtual playground. And the thing that is really great technology-wise for us is that as we are creating these events in Minecraft, these opportunities for kids to share resources or run across conflict, it's this completely natural environment where we can help scaffold problem-solving skills and negotiation and compromise, where we've never been able to monitor it in the same way that we can now, because the way that Minecraft works is that the kids have these chat logs, and you can see everything they say, and you can see every time you try a new intervention, how did that change it? How did it not change it? Can you see over time their behaviors changing or their language changing? So it's this it's a really great opportunity for those of us who are doing research and developing at the same time to get a lot of information back.
Great. Do you ever find that technology can be seen as an obstacle to health and wellness?
Nicole had a reaction.
Well, I just think about when we think about yoga, it's supposed to be this pure thing that you do with the teacher in the classroom. And so when we talk about being a tech-based yoga company, people are like, oh, what does that mean? That's not what we do in the yoga space. It's not how this practice should be. You're supposed to get kids mindful, not put them behind a screen. It's like, okay, I get that, I understand. But at the same time, for us, it's like, how can we deliver these tools in the most effective way? And for us, the majority of what we do with tech is through empowering the teacher and having a relationship with them. It's a professional development platform like any other. But at the same time, I think you do have to think about what is that limit with tech and where can it deter away from that experience. And so for us, we try to integrate yoga and mindfulness into existing tech platforms that kids are already using when we're working directly with students, so that we're not driving them to a new platform, we're not establishing a new practice with technology. We're just saying, or if you're going to be using these apps and watching these videos, you might as well breathe a little bit more deeply while you do that. And so I think we have to look at technology as a tool. I think especially, you know, in the yoga and mindfulness space, it's an and or if that kind of situation, but it's only going to help us become better people and foster better relationships with tech everywhere. So I'm for it.
And I think if I just think about the challenges, so you know, before GoNoodle came along 4 years ago, there was some teachers who were just looking for this kind of content on YouTube. And YouTube can be a scary place when you're pulling up videos from YouTube Live in front of a group of 7-year-olds. So I think for us, what we did is we created a very safe place that's comfortable for teachers. They're confident, they know the level of quality they're gonna get. They feel vested in what we've created. They're a voice to us around what we should be creating for the classroom. So I think if anything, we've actually looked at technology as a safer approach to maybe something they were doing previously.
Yeah, and speaking of safety, you know, there are some emerging technologies that I do have some concerns about, you know, virtual reality being one, and I think that I feel kind of lucky to be a little in on the early stages of some of these technologies. We're doing some experimenting with virtual reality. I just think that there's, because it is so isolating, and it's so visceral, and I think we have no idea yet the kind of impacts that spending a lot of time in that kind of environment has on kids' development. And so I like to be in on some experimenting and some conversations to just kind of monitor, you know, what's happening and hopefully find the places where that kind of technology is for good and not for harm. So I do have, you know, some concerns, but, you know, I also can see potential, you know, benefits.
I'll tell you just, again, from a very food-centric, as you probably picked up, but one of the things that I'm keeping an eye on, so far it's anecdotal, I'm hoping it doesn't become a big thing, but the advent of delivery, tech-enabled delivery, food delivery, has created a little bit of a mini trend where a lot of kids are now ordering themselves a lunch to be delivered to the school. It's just a little too easy to get Grubhub to pick up Chick-fil-A for you. Yeah, Uber Eats, precisely. I'm hoping that doesn't pick up any steam, but it's out there.
So I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Adam from Chicago. So one of the things that, hello. So I'm thinking about sustainability. So I feel like you all are talking about a lot about students, right? Like the impact on students. And my belief is that you really can't pour from an empty vessel, right? So when we're talking about, you know, SEL and sustainability, regardless of what platform you're using, one of the things that I'm seeing in the work that I do is that we have adults who are really charged with pressing play, right? Or leading the yoga or ordering the lunches that really need to have their own social emotional learning capacities developed so that, or competencies developed so that they can best serve kids. So even the best ideals will fall flat, I think, if we don't address the needs of the adults that are serving. How do you address that? How do you address that? I feel like I hear a lot of social emotional learning about the students and not much about the the teachers that are actually serving the students.
Great point.
I think that became immediately apparent to us when we started, because now 70% of our teachers have never taken a yoga class before they worked with us. Most of our teachers are interested in yoga because they think it'll be great for their kids, but have never themselves tried it. Before I started this organization, I was working as a volunteer yoga instructor in schools. The teachers wanted more yoga, and I thought, well, why don't you do yoga in your school? They're like, well, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I can't touch my toes, like, I can't do yoga. You need to come in and do this work. But in reality, when you have a body and you can breathe, you can practice yoga. So this wasn't an issue about getting more instructors. It was just about creating and fostering this practice. So our work begins with a self-care track for teachers. You can't work with us if you're not willing to do your own practice. And we provide free yoga classes to teachers, both digital resources so that they can take a class online and go to a local yoga studio to do this work so that they can teach with their kids. So for us, there is no in between. And we measure the impact on the students as much as we measure the decreases of stress and teacher burnout for adults. So we don't feel like we can parse it out. We just had a conversation, today's Teachers Appreciation Day. We were talking a little bit more about taking that self-care track out and having it be separate from our work with students. So if you come to our website, you can sign up for one program or another program, right? We're like, no, this is the same thing. I don't think that we can talk about student wellness without teacher wellness or vice versa.
I think your point about it being the same thing, Nicole, is exactly right. And when we look into classrooms and see them using GoNoodle, what we see is oftentimes the teachers participating with them, whether they're participating in a moment of reflection in a GoNoodle video or whether they're playing a GoNoodle game. To me, that's really about it. If the teacher truly wants to change the culture of the classroom, they have to participate with the students. And so in our mind, we encourage that participation. The other thing we've seen is GoNoodle's content works for adults if you're willing to be a little fun and goofy, we see teachers using it in their faculty meetings, at professional development meetings. So I don't know that it's directly to the point of we're training the teacher, so to speak, in a way that Nicole and her team does, but I think we're encouraging and seeing teachers participate, and we think that creates the best experience for the kids in the classroom when their teacher is right there with them.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think that the best design programs are programs that benefit both the adults and the children. I think that the barrier is too high to expect that a teacher, for example, is going to become a master of mindfulness before they're allowed to do, mindfulness with kids in the classroom, or, a fitness expert before they're allowed to do this with the kids. It's just too high with all the other demands that there are on teachers already. So I do feel like the best design programs benefit both the teachers and the students. When we have a program called Mind Yeti, which is mindfulness for kids. We call it mindfulness for kids and their adults. And when we've done our studies on this program, we find that the teachers are getting as much benefit as the kids, and then we'll often go on to pursue, and you probably find this too in the yoga, to pursue their own mindfulness practice, or to maybe even, pursue their own more, I don't know if you have this with GoNoodle, but really kind of get an interest in their own fitness and exercise. So I think that, yes, in a really well-designed program, that there is learning going on for both the adults and the students.
Other questions?
Thank you, guys. Quick question. Do you feel that there will ever be a convergence of trauma as it connects to SEL? I'm also representing Chicago as well. And I understand that SEL is a wonderful vessel for our students, but they live in two different environments. One of those environments being Chicago, and the other being the environment that we want to create, which is a safe space inside of the classroom. But you don't hear too many conversations about really diving deep into what trauma does to our kids, especially when they leave at 3 o'clock. And so, through the research or through some of your experiences, how can we as educators prepare our kids so when they do leave at 3, they come in with that full vessel because it wasn't emptied because of what they experienced after they left school? Thank you.
You want me to start with this?
Please.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, guys. Thank you.
Pass that right to her.
Yeah, no, thanks.
I agree with what she's going to say.
That's okay, I'm good, I can do it.
I want to sort of frame the question as to not misinform, right? So, and I will take off my moderator hat and respond as well, just on behalf of SEL. But I want to be very clear. The purpose of this panel is health and wellness. A subset of that is SEL, and so I don't want to leave you all with the impression that, you know, SEL means everything. It is a science of what happens in how kids teach, what happens in the classroom, what they are taught, and how they are taught. What happens in the, you know, in the school building in terms of policies and practices that promote social and emotional health and well-being. It has to do with district priorities around discipline, around hiring, around all those other things. It has to do with family and community partnerships, and we can talk about all of those things, but I don't want to leave this panel with the burden of all SEL. I think this is more globally health and wellness. So with that as a backdrop.
I'm happy to take it on from an organization that does provide specifically social emotional learning curriculum. And you know, we are well aware, as are many educators, about the effects of trauma on children, the long-term effects of trauma, not just on children, but on communities. And by no means do we think that even with a really robust evidence-based curriculum that we're going to solve all those problems, but we do see it as that we have a role to play in it, and we want to do that as best as possible, so that at least from our perspective, we feel like we need to inform ourselves as much as possible. So like from our development teams, we spend a lot of time going to conferences, talking to people, to experts, you know, around trauma-informed practice. I know there's a lot of professional development happening in schools about that. You know, there's a limited amount of what we can do as providers of curriculum to address that really serious issue. I mean, one of the things that we try to do is think, and this is really my role in the organization, is to think about how do we provide resources or other avenues for children to experience what they learn in the classroom, the social emotional kind of content that they learn in the classroom in other places where they might be. So whether it's a community center, so like here they have 9 to 3 in the classroom, but maybe from 3 to 5 they're at a community center. So maybe there's something we can do there. Maybe at some point they're you know, on a sports team, and perhaps there's something that we can do about training coaches. Many people have regular visits with their healthcare providers. How can we help those people who actually parents go to as their number one source for behavioral issues? And pediatricians are trained to deal with, you know, fevers and earaches, and they themselves are looking for resources. So I guess I don't know if I'm answering your question properly, but it's really to kind of take a look at the work we do and to educate ourselves about what the role we can play in helping kids who experience a lot of trauma, families and communities.
Do any of you have? So if I won't disappoint the audience by answering myself, which is sort of out of boundaries for moderator, I'm happy to offer a few thoughts. Does anybody object? Who's going to raise their hand? So let me just say briefly that fundamentally, the social and emotional learning movement is challenging the paradigm of what it means to be educated in this country. What is the purpose of education? And if we are successful as a nation to embrace the fact that kids learn and learn best when the whole child is taken into consideration, we will be more successful as educators, as innovators, and we will help students be prepared for life. Part of that then, of course, is if we take ownership and responsibility for the whole child, the social, the emotional, the academic lives of kids, who are those kids and what will it take in order to actually support social and emotional health and well-being? So the notion of meet kids where they are, kids who are trauma exposed, kids who come from great adversity, kids who may not have great support at home. I mean, those are the kids in our classrooms. So if we are going to be successful in the social and emotional learning movement, we have to attend to those issues. And that is a very complicated picture. It involves developing relationships with kids when a lot of adults don't know these kids, right? They're afraid of these kids. There are lots of challenges and lots of issues, but there is also a tremendous amount of progress being made in districts across this country, and there are great models to follow. And it's probably something we should set up a separate panel on. So, other questions?
Hello, thank you for being here. My name is Pietro D'Alessio. I have a question regarding the arts and music and overall wellness for kids, dance. My kids are at AISU here in Utah, and I found that since they've become involved in music and arts, their overall wellness factor is much higher. Is that an area that you guys could speak to?
I mean, music and arts changed my childhood experience. So personally, I'm in complete agreement, and I certainly think that there's incredible work that's happening in both the music space and the arts space that could be sitting here on this panel as well. I think that we need to continue to redefine what wellness means in the classroom and have those people as part of that conversation too.
Yeah, I'll say heck yes. You're absolutely right, and it's one of the things that gets sliced out. I mean, we heard earlier about what's happened to recess and what's happened to PE, and music went before PE did.
Hi, Craig Peters from California. I have a question about the entry points that you guys are finding for the schools. Are you getting into schools from a district level, from parents, from community partnerships, teachers?
Yeah, it's a great point. Great question. And what we've seen is we went right to teachers. We just think that GoNoodle fits into this category of classroom management, and the teacher has a lot of control around how they want the culture of their classroom to be amongst their students. And so we found that going right to the teacher and showing them what GoNoodle could do and what incorporating physical activity and moments of mindfulness would do. I mean, if you imagine 24 kids up and running next to their desk or dancing or stretching together, all of a sudden that's about creating a culture in the classroom. And what we saw is that when we got a teacher in a building to use GoNoodle, next thing you know, we had another teacher using it, and then another teacher using it. And then the kids would go from Mrs. Jones' class to Mrs. Smith's class and say, hey, we got to do GoNoodle over there, can we do GoNoodle here? And so it just kind of takes off and really has grown virally inside of a school. That's not to say that principals and school district leaders have been super supportive. But we've just found that let's go right to the teacher, because at the end of the day, the teacher is really responsible for how they want their class to feel for their students.
Same with us. It's really been a teacher by teacher growth, and it's so much fun to see when they refer other teachers and they become the champions of this practice in their classrooms. We've also had a ton of success with connecting the yoga and wellness community with this work that's happening in schools. A lot of times in the yoga space specifically, we talk about this wellness gap. There's 50 million people that do this practice and 50 million public school students that might not necessarily have the chance to move during the day. So it makes a lot of sense to bring these two worlds together. Yogis might, they're usually in their late 20s by average. They don't have kids. They went to school at a different time than kids are now. So they don't really understand what's happening behind those brick walls that they walk by every day on the way to their yoga studio. So for us, it's been really important to, once that teacher's in the classroom doing this work and is going to local yoga studios and downloading the Headspace app and doing mindfulness practices, that they know that their community is behind them, donating gently used yoga mats or fundraising for them to be able to work with us. So that's been key for us to kind of shift this idea of what yoga and wellness is.
Yeah, so on the other side of the coin, we actually, at Committee for Children, primarily provide to school districts. We disseminate our programs through district sales. And we're a nonprofit, but we are a social enterprise and have spent many, many years. People often will come and ask, like, how is it that you're in so many schools? And we talk about it not happening overnight. The organization has been around for almost 40 years. And
And in the last few years, it's really been interesting for us to kind of watch and see these amazing, startups come out that are direct to teachers, and then we decided to try it too, with the mindfulness program, starting directly with teachers, and it's just really interesting to just see the differences and the similarities, I guess, between this more district dissemination approach or that organic growth and the referrals. And I mean, you can see with GoNoodle in particular, because you have such a huge uptake, it's been really cool to see that happen. Yeah, but excellent content, so.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We went from 0 teachers in August of 2013 to 620,000 teachers used GoNoodle last month in their classrooms. So we've been very fortunate in that regard. But I think the great thing is just when you see something connect with a teacher and a teacher realizes this practice belongs in her classroom or his classroom, regardless of what program they're using, the idea that they embrace and see that this is having a positive effect on their students and the culture of the classroom, that's the most fulfilling part about this, is that it's not just something they tried and did, that it's actually something that they've committed to and made part of the ethos of that room, and then it continues and really takes on a life of its own.
For us, it's a school by school. Obviously, the school doesn't want my ambassador wandering around handing out lunches without their permission, nor do I want that person doing that. We're only going to do this if we've got the active support and exclusive partnership with the school. What's interesting is it's a unique school decision. Even when we're talking about smaller public schools that are part of a district, or for example, when we're looking at the parochial part of the archdiocese, each school tends to do their own unique spin on how to solve the lunch problem. And so even when there's a larger organization around them, it's still a very unique school decision. And that school is making that decision in often a unique way. Sometimes the parents are very actively involved. Sometimes the parents are the ones really championing it. That's probably when it works best, particularly when we have a parent who's used us, their child had us over the summer at summer camp. Now they're coming back to school and the parent says, you need to be in here. Sometimes it's the school championing it. It really varies a great deal, but it is inevitably so far in our experience has been a specific institutional decision at that single school.
And your question may have been a little bit more maybe about business decisions, and I think that we talk a little bit more about sort of the mission and impact, but if you want to talk afterwards a little bit more about, if you're curious about what we've experienced, in sort of business-wise, I'm happy to chat with you afterwards.
I would also offer that from a funding perspective, there are significant trends that will show us that this is the direction that the country is moving. One example is at CASEL we have a collaborating states initiative, which is basically offering state departments of education the opportunity to partner with us as a nonprofit to help them develop standards and guidelines for social and emotional learning. We put out whoever is interested, show up. 40 of the 50 states applied to be partners in this initiative, and we ended up taking applications and are now working actively with 19 states. So if that's any indication of where the interest lies, even at the policy level from the state departments of education, I mentioned that as a sign of progress. Other questions? Yes.
So I guess a lot of the focus right now is, thank you, is on the United States, it sounds like. But I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on social emotional learning, health and wellness, all of this on a global level. So maybe things like influences from other countries or influences on other countries, or kind of where you think this may go in the future.
Yeah, I can share just our experience at GoNoodle's been, we now have users in 185 countries. That's the benefit of having a freemium model and having teachers tell other teachers about it. And what we've seen is that this is the really exciting part to us, is that movement really transcends language, and that it's everything we've created to date, by and large, is in English. We do have some in Spanish, but we've not heard this call for translation. What we've heard is a call for even more content, And we just think that kids getting up and moving, or kids taking a moment to reflect, that really does transcend language, and that's the feedback that we've gotten. So from our experience is that I think there is an appetite globally for this. And unfortunately, the trends that are playing out in the United States around inactivity of kids and dealing with an enormous amount of social or stress and anxiety for kids, those are not unique to the United States, unfortunately. And so I think the types of things that we're all creating certainly can be exportable.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you, I mean, when it comes to food, we're looking at the international community as a source of inspiration. Nearly everybody's better at it than we are. I personally, if I look at the American attitude towards food historically, it's been more please, and tends to be a very simple palate, and not a terribly balanced palate. If you look at school lunches across the globe, there are many, many countries that are doing a vastly better job than we are. And it's frustrating, it's inspirational. It's also a source of inspiration for our menus. I mentioned the cauliflower tikka masala. There are cuisines out there that are just incredibly good at getting away from fried meat, and we're trying to take full advantage of that.
David, do you not have the pizza farmer lobby from other countries?
No, it doesn't appear to be as prevalent there.
I would say, just from a social and emotional curriculum perspective, there are challenges around localization, and so we generally will partner with sponsors in other countries who will localize the curriculum, do the translations, so that it is culturally relevant, and that's a whole set of other work, which is rewarding and challenging. But ours doesn't translate as easily as movement. The mindfulness seems to. Again, when you have a product that is a freemium model like we do as well, people can pick it up anywhere. So you can just look at your Google Analytics and see where everybody is using it, and that's exciting in the middle of the night. But to create curricula, you have to be, really attuned and have a partner, locally.
So we probably have time for one more question.
Thank you. I have a question actually for David. I started as an elementary teacher, and I also would like to see the Lunchable become extinct. And so I'm curious, what are we missing as teachers? What food has the convenience of a Lunchable, but a stronger nutritional content that I should be switching out a Lunchable with?
There's a very self-interested answer to that I'm going to try not to give. It's hard, right? Because the problem is the Lunchable, there's nothing more convenient. They're for sale everywhere. You can usually get them for $1 a piece. They'll last in your fridge for quite a while. Kids do love them. In terms of where do you send the parents, honestly, you can do some, one of the things that I've seen happen and that we're having some success with is the make your own pizza mock-up. You swap that out with whole wheat slices of bread, a nice marinara, avoid the added sugar, some chopped up mozzarella. It's a nice lunch. It's labor. It's labor for the mom, which is tough, but it's not that bad, and it maybe gets you there. There are also, there are some lunch delivery startups that are delivering cold, tasty, nutritious lunches to the house on a weekly basis. That may also, if they get their price point down, that too could be an option, but I don't have an easy answer. Fresh food's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So we can probably sneak in the very last one.
So I'm working with a company called edible.edu. Are you familiar with edible.edu?
A little more context would be great.
So a company, called edible.edu, and they actually are doing a program to try to bring portable kitchens into schools. And they're helping to teach kids about cooking and how to find alternative types of food so that, could just kind of go along with it. And that's really part about bringing that nutrition and helping our kids to learn what nutrition is versus what they see generally in the homes of what it is. So I was curious, it made me think of it with your program.
I will take a look at them. I'll tell you, though, one of the things that's a real tailwind on the whole food thing is this celebrity chef culture we've got going. because it has got kids excited about cooking. And so things like that are an amazing opportunity to get in there young and get the kids thinking about what's good food and how do you make it. So it sounds brilliant. I'll check it out.
And it just brings me to another point too, like there's the whole science of food. So when we're teaching science in our, next generation science standards, there's a whole science of food where we can really try to guide that curriculum into really helping to teach our kids once again about good food.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tons of surface area. It's incredible.
Well, there's no shortage of opportunities for us to improve health and wellness of our kids in this country and maybe all of adults as well. Thank you, Scott and Nicole and Mia and David, for your what you're bringing to the schools and for helping to make the world a healthier place. Thank you all for joining, and I think we all may be headed that way if there are any additional questions. Thank you.